The game I want to talk about is the brilliant game Lemmings, released on Valentine's Day in 1991 on the Amiga originally and the PC, and then porting to pretty much every system known to man. Quite why I have such a fascination with the green-haired furry rodents I couldn't tell you. But right from the opening game's line of "Let's go!" I was hooked and smitten with all things Lemmings related. In the game you have to direct your suicidal furry critters from a trapdoor that's mysteriously floating in the air, and as they fall through into the level you must help them reach the exit door by assigning the Lemmings certain skills, such as being able to climb or give them an umbrella so they're able to float down to the floor. The difficulty in the game comes about with the hapless creatures continuing to walk until something stops or kills them. So assigning these skills becomes a real task in speed and mouse dexterity. The puzzle part comes in by each level only having limited skills available for you to choose from, meaning that sometimes you have to think outside of the box to be able to finish a level. Rescue enough lemmings and you can then proceed on to the next level. Or make a mistake, or even if you feel particularly vindictive, you can nuke the poor blighters into oblivion. The game has great music as well. Originally, the developers wanted to choose tunes like Mission Impossible and other TV themes, but they got cold feet with regards to the copyright. So instead, they chose only songs that were known but fallen out of copyright, like London Bridge and How Much Is That Doggy in the Window and the Can-Can. The game is generous as well, offering you 120 single player levels to work through, and when you tire of the main game there is a great 2-player versus game as well. It's a great, wonderful title and you need to play it. But how did such an original and unique game come about? The game was made in Dundee in Scotland by a recently formed software house called DMA Design, who are of course better known today as Rockstar North. It had been set up by school friends David Jones, Russell Kay, Steve Hammond and Mike Daly, who had all met in 1983 at a Dundee's Kingsway Amateur Computer Club. They would make some hit shooters that were published by Psygnosis, such as Menace and the sequel Blood Money. Both were great and they would do quite well, selling maybe about 60,000 copies, but it was their next game that would truly put them on the map. That game was Lemmings. The game actually came about when Scott Johnson, of course the author of Hired Guns, had actually been hired as a freelance artist for DMA Design, rescuing him from a 2-week stretch behind the counter of McDonald's, and he was given the task of creating graphics for the game that they were working on called Walker. A friendly disagreement arose between how small the characters in the Walker game could be and still retain character. Scott Johnson felt that 16 by 16 pixels was really the smallest that you could go, but Mike Daly from DMA Design was convinced you could go even smaller, going right down to 8 by 8 pixels. And so, to prove his point, Mike spent his lunch hour to make smaller characters. The result was a cute little animation that had 8 by 8 characters being squished and walking towards a weight. Gary Simmons, another artist at DMA Design, improved the animation still further, making it more fluid in the Lemmings walk. And you can see this at the chomping mouth, how the lemmings move that little bit more smoothly. Russell Kay, another DMA employee, commented that there was a game in these critters and started to call them Lemmings. The team started to get excited and so put together an early demo on the PC on the 26th of September 1989. But Psygnosis and other publishers just couldn't see a game idea from what they'd showed them. So DMA decided to initially fund the game themselves. Interestingly though, it was this PC demo that gave the Lemmings their unique look with their green hair, as it came out of the limited EGA PC palette that the team had to work with. So, working off their own bat, DMA put a few levels together, and with this, Psygnosis finally could see the game's potential and what DMA was so excited about, and so snapped up the publishing rights. Lemmings was a massive hit, going on to sell 55,000 copies on its opening day of release, and has continued to spawn many conversions and sequels ever since. So where are DMA Design today? Well, they would go on to do a certain game called Grand Theft Auto, and now are of course known as Rockstar North. David Jones would also go on to create the game Crackdown that you might have played, and even showed up in E3 in 2014, showing off his new Crackdown 3 game. As for the Lemmings, well, you know, the poor critters aren't really suicidal. The myth came about in the 50s when zoologists were convinced from population massive decreases that the lemmings committed suicide as a way to naturally control their population levels. This seemed to be proven without any doubt when an educational Disney wildlife documentary caught on camera the poor lemmings plunging off a cliff to their doom. Except they weren't. They were actually being herded off the cliff by the Disney filmmakers who wanted to capture the suicidal rodents on film but were fed up with waiting. So they charged and hurled the poor blighters to their deaths. So there you go. Go play this classic game and you won't be disappointed. And remember, a Lemmings is for life and not just for your Amiga.